like we're in hell or something. No, it's Hill Valley, although I can't imagine hell being much worse.
Hello, welcome everyone to Downtime. Thank you so much for joining us. I've got to tell you, like everything else, just going straight to hell in a handbasket. How are you, Lance? I don't have you up yet. I'll have you up in a second, but everyone should be able to hear you at least.
Where are we going, and why are we in this handbasket again?
It's a place called hell.
Okay.
I didn't believe it existed, but once we elected a certain orange to it's all I see now.
Okay.
Oh dear Lord. So so the discussion for the show and to be serious for a minute, it is going to be a little bit of I think it's a worthwhile discussion. What do we think we and the states are looking at? How are things going to be handled roughly state to state on the first? But there are people who have been within time from the beginning, major contributors who have relied on SNAP, and it's as much as we're going to try to have a good show tonight and try to have some fun, and as much as I thought would go straight to that discussion, too many interesting little things came up today that was just a little out of the blue. Actually, let's see. There was a confirmation hearing. U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Richard Connell was having a confirmation hearing today, and he probably thought it was going to be an easy confirmation hearing because everybody likes him and nobody was going to give him a hard time. Then Trump said something that was a little odd. And so I wanted to ask you as a military man, because I am ignorant, I guess, of these things. Is there a difference? So, in fact, actually, what I want to show you is this here is a Minuteman III nuclear missile. It's a ICBM, and it's being tested. Is there a difference between testing an ICBM or testing a strategic missile, nuclear missile, and conducting a nuclear test? Are those different things? Is that a difference anybody would really be concerned about?
Semantics.
Semantics. That's what I said. People are all, testing a nuclear missile versus doing a nuclear test. I
mean, the world nuclear powers all agreed that testing nuclear weapons, even below ground, was not a good thing because it was always releasing radioactivity into the atmosphere, which, because of the unpredictability of prevailing winds and such, was going to hurt people. So the agreement was we would all stop that. There have been a few instances of people not adhering to that. The most notable being our good friends in North Korea. But everybody else, including the Chinese and the Russians, have pretty much held true to not doing nuclear testing.
And that's really, even the Russians, who will violate any treaty.
Yeah, because they understand that it's in their own best interest not to.
Okay. So, nuclear testing, bad idea. And Mitch points out, they can be detected. It's like third parties will know if you do it. It's not.
Oh, yeah. I remember there was a lot of suspicion when both Israel and South Africa were said to have developed the bomb because, as far as anybody could tell, they'd never actually tested it. Except there was one instance about the time when one would assume Israel had been getting ready to test, when it was developing its own nuclear capability. Out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, there's this mysterious event, and it's picked up on sensors, but nobody claimed responsibility, and it was only the one time. Some people said, well, maybe it was the South Africans. I doubt it, but, it could have been. But, yeah. And that our problem with the Iranians, of course, is that they, allegedly are trying to develop nuclear capability. They'll be in a situation where they're pretty much forced to test their weapon at some point to verify that it actually works. They, as far as I know, were not signatories to the nuclear test ban. But, what does that mean in this day and age?
Well, and I assume eventually they would, if they became a nuclear power, they would become one. But yeah, being a nuclear power, there's really one bar, and it's a pretty clear bar. Are you capable of detonating a nuclear explosion on your own or not? It's just that simple. And there's only one way to find out. Okay, so Trump basically said that he wants to resume nuclear testing, which the U.S. hasn't done in at least 33 years. He said he's ordered the Pentagon to do it. The Pentagon has it was somebody at the Pentagon, whoever's like the bureaucrat in charge of the Pentagon, who said, they said, are you following the president's orders? He goes, absolutely. Said the president in his comments said that he wants to maintain parity with China and Russia. Neither of them are engaged in nuclear testing of any kind. Therefore, we are not changing we're not doing it. I was just like, oh, well done. Here's a guy who deserves his job. He knows what he's doing. I don't think Trump is that. I mean, Trump has a lot of pride. I think he's just going to ignore or come up with well, everybody knows I meant, I mean, if China ends up,
what it is, assuming he doesn't really want to start or restart testing, all it is a metric for, are you going to be loyal to me when I say to do something that you disagree with? What's your position on nuclear testing? Well, what's your position, Mr. President? I think it's a great thing. Oh, well, then I think it's a great thing too. Or, well, I think that's pretty stupid. Bye, your career's over.
Yeah, who did they just oust? They just ousted somebody who contradicted him on something about 3 months ago. Just a lawyer said you can't do this, and it turned out they were right, and he hasn't been able to do it. But he's gone anyway. It's just like, oh my God. Let's see. ICE is planning on, and I'm really curious. I want to know. Okay, well, so presumably he was a little shaken by the fact that the Kremlin started testing the Poseidon missile, which is supposed to be its newest cruise missile, and it traveled for 12 hours, which is a big deal for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, if you can strike it.
Choice of name, since we already have a Poseidon missile.
Yeah, the U.S. I thought the U.S. had one. That was.
Although it's, as far as I'm aware, phased out. Everything is Trident now.
So let's see. Okay, I'm going to close this out and then just. So there is a judge in Boston, and She has. I'm actually very proud of Boston. It's the Boston circuit or the Boston judges that have been really slowing Trump down. They haven't been stopping him, but they've been slowing him down. As you know, the SNAP program has 6 billion in reserves, which is only a month, but it's a month for everybody. And so somebody has sued them over refusal to use those funds in this case, and a Boston judge, U.S. District Judge 𝐒𝐨𝐻𝐿𝐷 has said, quote, "Right now, Congress has put money into an emergency fund for an emergency. And it's hard for me to understand how this isn't an emergency where there's no money and a lot of people are going to need their SNAP benefits." So that's a good sign, indicator of how she's going to rule. She hasn't ruled yet. My guess is she rules tomorrow and says that the funds have to be released. Now, best case scenario, it takes them a week to get the offices open again because nobody's going into the USAID. And they're going to be understaffed. Then it takes them a week to start sending out the checks, and they're not going to get up to full speed. And nobody's going to be getting 100%, but something's moving. That's assuming Trump doesn't just ignore this. So either way, on November 1st, something's going to happen, and nobody knows. What is it going to be chaos? Is it going to be right away? Is it going to be over time?
Well, if you can't precipitate violence against the regime by sending troops into cities or ICE raids, cutting off benefits to the disadvantaged and the people that desperately need those to continue, that's a great way to potentially provoke violence. And, then you can immediately invoke, military rule everywhere. And I think that may well be what's intended here, is because increasingly he's getting more and more pushback to stuff he's doing. I mean, I understand there's been suits filed about what he's doing with the grand ballroom and tearing down the East Wing. All of this stuff, people are just saying, enough of this crap, dude. And more, it's becoming evident he and the rest of the Heritage Foundation proto-fascists need to provoke something so that they can put an end to an opposition, which is gaining momentum.
Oh, okay. I want to pull that apart a bit.
Sure.
First, I'd like to just in as part of that, the Senate today, and this was another one. I have a very hard time going to breaking news with this because there are some people who hear it and they're like, "Oh my God, it's over! It's over!" It's like, no, this means nothing in the sense that you think. The Senate passed a bill that said that Trump's emergency declaration, which allows him to impose tariffs at any time on anyone he wants to, ended the second he made it. So that's beautifully done. They're not saying there was no emergency or he lied. They're not saying anything contestable on that fact. They're just saying the second he declared it, it was over. So he lost all. So all tariffs that he had imposed are illegal. They all need to be returned. All this stuff. It had 4 Republicans with it. It passed. This was attempted before, you may remember, but it tied, and Vance came in, broke the tie against. In my view, this is staggering, because it means the Senate is for once saying enough with the gaslighting. We all know there's no emergency. We all know that but the emperor has no. It's the first time a body stood up and said that.
The giant red brick wall is starting to show cracks.
Yeah.
And given how liberal they are with threatening people with, primarying them and running opposition candidates against them if they don't toe the line, et cetera, the fact that you could even get 4 Republicans to break ranks speaks volumes.
Well, and to those who have said, and there's been a few, not many, most have just said, wait a minute, it's in the Senate. What does that mean it's done, or does it have to pass the House? It has to pass the House. And in order to pass the House, it has to even be brought to a vote. If it were brought to a vote, it would lose. It's not even going to be brought to a vote because the person who determines that is Johnson, and he is not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. So it's dead. It's dead. Nothing happened. But for once, a body representing the American people stood up and said the emperor has no clothes. And that was shocking and much needed and much overdue, I think. So in keeping with that, that may be motivation to keep the government shut down. I think that helps Trump on a number of ways. Now, when the SNAP benefits expire, we've seen people going to TikTok saying this is how you rob a grocery store. I mean, complete legit, this is how you rob a grocery store. They're not saying how to not get caught after you brought your groceries home, but they are telling you how to rob the grocery store. They're telling you how to...
We should clarify that does not mean hand me your money from the guy at the till.
Thank you. Yes, we should.
It's essentially shoplifting in quantity.
Yeah, they basically said, look, if you walk out of there with the basket, unless there's an armed security guard, they won't stop you. But they've got cameras. The police will find you and pick you up, which may also, by the way, be part of, because the number of people that they're deporting. Here's another interesting thing that just happened. ICE is now contracting in Texas to deport, to have Texas as part of their intake process into prison, notifying ICE of anyone who is not a natural-born citizen and having them come up and take them to a detention center to either determine their status or send them away immediately. So if you're going to prison in Texas, the first thing they do before decide even like what wing to put you in, do we put them in with other murderers or do we put them into the nice, before that, they determine whether or not they need to call ICE. So that's just, they're doing that in Texas. And my suspicion is we are, and the numbers actually, so for the longest time, the U.S. had more people in prison than any other country in the world, including China, that has a 3 times larger population. It's a dictatorship, and they have fewer people in jail than we do. And that's actually a very difficult problem to solve because it's a self-fulfilling, it's a vicious cycle once it starts. This is going to be an interest. I'm wondering if, I looked, because to prepare for the show, I just wanted to double check that the U.S. is still number 1. We're not. We're number 3. El Salvador is number 1. And it has tripled the number of prisoners that it has over the last 5 years. And I'm wondering if they're making these kinds of deals with other countries and they're basically going to become, their commodity is going to be space, jail space. And if we're going to just start sending everybody there we don't like, including people who are not white, because we have lowered, we are now only going to accept 3,700 immigrants a year on emergency visas, and we're going to give priority to South Africanus. So white people who are suffering persecution at the hands of blacks, so on and so forth. But I'm getting back to all this. So I think there is a war on the lower class as well in this. But having said all that, in general, the states that most rely on SNAP tend to be red states. The blue states tend to have most of their shit together. And this is just statistically a fact. They have the highest education. My state, for every dollar that we give the federal government, we get 70 cents back for funding highways and so on and so forth. That's my state. And that's a lot of blue states. Meanwhile, Texas, for every dollar they put in, they get $1.30 back. They're getting my 30 cents to help them out, and they still can't get their heads above water.
Yep.
The states with the lowest income include Mississippi, West Virginia, Louisiana, and rounding out the bottom 10 are Arkansas, Alabama, and Kentucky. Now, most of these states, 8 of the bottom 10 voted for Trump. So when these SNAP benefits run out, so what the TikToks, what they had been was, yeah, they'd been, okay, you load up a shopping cart, and then instead of going to the cashier, just go straight for the door. Just ignore the cashiers, act like you've already paid and head out. And this is what they're showing people doing this. And so it seems to me that they're preparing to, and if you do this in a low income neighborhood, you're going to be robbing stores that can't afford to be, shoplifting from stores that can't afford to have the product taken and also can't afford to lose the food stamp income. At any rate, isn't this going to most affect his base? Isn't this going to highlight the difference between blue states and red states? And what do you think that difference is going to be fundamentally as this gets started? And yeah.
Well, it will not have, I think, a huge direct impact on his cultists because most of them aren't that strata of society. They're above that level. Now, they're the ones in many cases whose businesses depend on that kind of stuff. So they will be impacted, but it's not that they necessarily will feel the pain directly. They will blame it on, whatever Fox News tells them to blame it on. We talked about this just before the show started. I almost think this may be another intentional mechanism because we've tried ICE raids. We didn't get a violent response to them. We've tried sending the U.S. military into the streets to provide security, hoping that would provoke violent reactions. It didn't. So if you cut off social services support to the most vulnerable in the society, they really don't have much choice other than either stealing things or rioting or what have you. And in that case, you can say, oh, insurrection, invoking the act, and every blue state governor is going to be arrested because he's supporting insurrection. Doesn't matter that all the violence and rioting is in red states. All he needs is an excuse to pull shit like that.
And a number of the blue states are, in fact, at least trying to make up the difference for their, New York, Rhode Island, Oregon have all declared states of emergency. They're pulling out of their emergency budgets to help feed people. You don't see that response in the red states so much.
Nope. Because all that money is earmarked for billionaires to, do stuff. That's important, not small people.
Do you think that this is a prelude to the use of the Insurrection Act? And do you think that there's what would you ballpark the possibility of the Insurrection Act being invoked before the end of November?
I can't predict with a number. I'll put it this way. Increasingly, we're seeing the edges eroding around the fortress of fascism that he's built himself. More and more MAGAs are distancing themselves, expressing confusion and doubt about the whole Epstein matter. They want to see the files released. You just said 4 Republican senators voted for this thing. It's happening everywhere. We've got candidates in little local elections that we've got going out here who are MAGA types, and they're doing their level best to distance themselves from, oh yes, I've been totally in favor of all these programs. They can't say, no, I'm against ICE doing the raids, but what they're saying is things like, well, it needs to have more oversight, but they're necessary, that kind of stuff. But
yeah.
well, what I'm pointing out is that the support for the regime is beginning to erode. In deeply red states, and admittedly, I live in a predominantly blue state, but in deeply red states, that may not be as obvious or evident, but it's still happening. It's happening nationwide because stupid things are being done that hurt people. And I don't mean just, withholding SNAP funds. It's tariffs that are causing farmers, who are traditionally one of the most conservative voting blocs, they're losing their farms. Their livelihoods are being destroyed because of these stupid tariffs. And he won't, revoke them. And they're getting mad about it. And the more of that happens, the less and less capable the regime is going to be of able to say, look at the great support. It's only those radical lefties that hate us, and it's everybody pretty much hates you because you're a pack of incompetent, lying criminals.
Well, and the military's got to be getting, Pete Hegseth is, from my understanding, loathed in the military. And then when he says something like this, the nuclear thing I like to make fun of, but I have to believe if you're in the military and the commander-in-chief does not understand the difference. It's
one thing to have a bunch of flag officers in a room give a speech and they don't react. Yep. Like what happened. He recently had, and I can't remember which base it's at, but he had a big thing with, everybody must go to mandatory fund day to see the president. And the enlisteds didn't react favorably. Nobody yelled anything. I'm sure they were cautioned beforehand. You can't say anything negative, but they didn't applaud or cheer. That tells you a lot. And he was saying really dumb stuff. It's worth looking up some of it. But my favorite was, I always wanted to be an admiral. I would have been a great admiral, but I couldn't be an admiral because I'm just not that bad.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's just like, that everybody's kind of looking, you could think that, they want to ask the officers, what the hell are we doing? Why are we letting this idiot do what he's doing? Why aren't you guys standing up and doing something about it? Nobody's ever actually going to articulate that, of course, but that's the impression you get when you start looking at the reactions that people are having to him. Yeah, he'll hold rallies and people will turn out because they're required to turn out. And there'll be a few people that'll applaud politely, but most of them are just sitting there silent, staring at him. It was like, you need to go away.
Well, and not for nothing, 10% of the military is on SNAP.
Yep.
So, and then just two quickies. First, I was mildly incorrect. So it was two federal prosecutors were suspended. They're U.S. attorneys. They were suspended for calling the January 6th defendants, quote, a mob of rioters in court filings and these were court filings in another issue, but they actually referenced the 6 defendants as a mob of rioters, and for that they have been suspended.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's exactly you can't even oh Jesus. That's Orwellian. And last year,
this is living under Pol Pot, Kim Jong-un, Stalinist Russia. It's you cannot say anything not just critical of, but that isn't immense support for the anointed godly leader.
Can you imagine what the military leaders of the 80s would think of the U.S. right now? Oh. This was the very thing that they we're fighting against. If Russia were genuinely, if the Soviets had a better system, and if the Soviets were happier and freer and all this other stuff, we probably wouldn't mind losing to them. What we were fighting was everybody being bugged, everybody being monitored, no freedom to say what you wanted to, everybody gaslighting everybody 24/7 about reality. That's what we were fighting. And now Putin is sitting there,
laughing his ass off.
well, yeah, laughing his ass off, and in part he helped get us here because he had no small part in Trump getting elected, and still has. I love somebody did this little circular diagram thing that's just like Trump says he'll end the war because he's buddies with Putin. Trump talks with Putin, comes out saying that a deal is soon to be hashed. No deal. Trump says he's disappointed in Putin. War continues. Trump says he can end the war because he's buddies with Putin. Trump meets with Putin, and this whole it's just circular. And it's just, and I mean, again, people are like, well, Trump has said. It's just like, then somebody else, Trump. There was a meme. I think Titan sent me this one that said, it's Trump, sticking out his chest. Well, I can send Trident missiles to anyone I want. What? Hello, Putin? Oh, okay. Yeah, we're not sending Trident missiles to Russia.
Yeah. It's so patently obvious that things are falling apart around them, and the diehards are getting more and more erratic and irrational in trying to find ways to prove that they're right. Not just to prove that they're right to the rest of the country, but to the big orange boss in the sky. It's like if you look at what was going on in Berlin and the Fuhrer bunker as things are falling apart, everybody's making these pilgrimages into this besieged city. Chances of being able to get out after you get there are slim to none. And they're all going there to pledge their undying loyalty to Hitler, because they're more scared of Hitler sending his cronies to kill you if he thinks that you're not up, on his platform with him. And I think that's kind of what's going on, is everybody sees that the house of cards is teetering. The orange God King is, if not completely delusional, he's certainly borderline delusional. He recently bragged somewhere about, oh yes, I took a mental acuity test, and it took me 3 tries, and I finally got it right. It was a very difficult test. And you listen to him describe what the test is. It's the test they give people to see if they're suffering from Alzheimer's, from delusions.
Yep.
And it's just like, does the square go in the round hole or the square hole? I mean, seriously. And it took him 3 tries to get it right.
He did really good on his MRI too. If you heard, like, why are you gonna get MRI, dude?
Yeah, and everybody knows that the fruit is starting to rot on the vine. Eventually, it's going to fall off the vine, and they just want to make sure that their nests are well feathered before that happens.
Well, on what I assume is a completely unrelated story, Titan just sent me this. It's from the Atlantic, published today. Top Trump officials are moving onto military bases. Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, and others have taken homes that until recently housed senior officers. So they're moving on. They're fucking moving onto military bases.
Why do you think that is? Come on, Nick. You can guess.
because they think the house cards may be coming down and the military is required by law to protect them. At least if they're on the base. Wow.
They're afraid of the mob. So they're going where they know the mob is less likely to make a thing.
I don't think I recall any time in history when top cabinet members moved on to military bases.
Well, even in World War II, we didn't do it. Even at the height of the early part of after Pearl Harbor, when everybody said the Japanese are going to invade the West Coast. None of that. This is strictly this regime, because they're so out of touch with reality. They've created their fantasy world, and as they see it falling apart, they're doing everything they can to try to shore it up for as long as they can. And I think that's one of the things that's going on with this whole program of putting up the giant ballroom of we're going to build an arch to Trump and everything. That's all part of the, how can I siphon money out of the system for myself? Because they're going to have contacts with the architects or the builders or the contractor or what have you. And I'm sure there's money sliding under the table at a furious rate right now, because they know that the music is about to stop and there ain't going to be as many chairs as there are criminals running around in circles right now.
Yeah, they thought when the music stopped there'd be more than enough chairs, because there were plenty when the music started. When the music started, it's all chairs. That's the way fascism is played. That's why it's so appealing, because everybody's going to get a chair. Everyone's going to get 6 chairs, and then the music's coming to a stop. You're like, there ain't that many chairs. There's like 2 chairs in this entire.
Where's my chair? You burned it last week.
Oh, I also wanted to make I think we underestimate the voting power of farmers, and one reason is because they're not on TikTok, they're not on and they don't create the same kind of political. It's almost like underestimating also the older voting bloc, which people do, except the AARP is one of the most influential political action committees.
I think part of it is because farmers live in rural areas and they socialize with their own group at their little churches every Sunday. They don't need to be, on social media, because that's not part of their worldview.
Yep.
The rest of us have social media because it's what we do to communicate with the rest of the world. When you're talking about people who only really need to communicate with the guy at the repair shop to fix your tractor, the guy at the Grange to figure out, how to price things, and the guy at the grain elevator when you take your crops in and sell them. Outside of that, you really don't need to talk to a whole hell of a lot of people.
Yep. And you don't, I think you don't have an interest. If you did, you'd have moved on and picked another job.
Right. But more to the point, because of that, you are a conservative, because your world is such a small world. It doesn't encompass things like people from other countries, people of other sexual persuasions, what have you. It's not part of your worldview. Therefore, it is evil and it must be dealt with, because you want everything to conform to your sense of reality. And they're now finding that, the guy that you trusted was going to do that for you could care less about you.
And did the same. So what we learned from him visiting China, and I honestly was shocked by this, because Trump does have the ability to learn at least a bit. That's one of the things we know, because he learned to take the office more seriously this time, and that if he did, he could game it for a lot more money. This is a different administration. He hit the ground running this time, so he can learn. The first time he got into a trade war with China, which is really stupid to get into a trade war with a dictatorship that can change its entire economy on a dime. Don't do it. And it's not that they're better than a democracy does not have as nimble an economy, period, end of discussion. And then he does it again, and I'm like, okay, he's got to have a card. There's something he's planning, because he's going to lose. He's going to lose unless there's something we don't know about. And it turned out, nope, there's nothing we don't know about. And Fox News is touting this as a huge win, of course, and I've been on Fox, and they're like, he's doing great. And every other news organization, and I go to Europe usually for these because they actually don't care either way, and they're like, yeah, our basic takeaway is Trump said he's going to lower the tariffs on China by 10%, and in exchange, China is going to continue to give them precious metals, which they were probably going to do anyway because they want the money, and the U.S. is willing to pay through the nose for it. And the U.S. agrees not to increase. No, we didn't agree not to increase tariffs, and we can increase tariffs. And it had apparently the tariffs had almost no impact on the Chinese economy because they were even more ready for it this year. But as to the farmers, in 2024, China imported 51%. They represented 51% of all of the soybean market. They imported 51% of all the soybeans that we produced. $12 billion worth. It's about 27 million metric tons. So think about that for a second. They imported.
Let me interrupt for a second.
Please. Yes.
When we did this and they stopped buying soybeans from us, who are they now buying soybeans from?
I think they're making them. They just ordered their own.
No.
Oh, no.
Argentina and Brazil.
Argentina and Brazil, that's right.
Who are we giving massive amounts of aid to shore up their failing currency? Argentina. Why is there a correlation with those two events in my mind?
So you're saying the part of the reason for the tariffs is to help Argentina?
No. I'm saying, first, the tariffs destroy our local soybean producers.
Yes.
The customers then find soybeans in another locale where a government run by an extreme conservative, arguably a proto-fascist, needs to have his currency shored up. And we give them 20 billion and then say, well, we're going to find you another 20 billion to make sure everything's okay from private sources for you. Who's going to be getting the quid pro quo from all this underhanded dealing?
It's definitely going to be Trump.
Somebody in the administration, very likely the man at the top, is getting his cut. It's no different than what you see in Russia, where oligarchs who were in charge of, let's say, pickle production or what have you, fall out of windows, and somebody acquires all their businesses at a half a kopeck on the ruble. And the guy's name starts with a P, I think. His last name. It'll come to me.
Oh, yeah.
It's a kleptocracy, and those are the kind of people that the Orange God King is trying to emulate. He wants to be one of them. He thinks that's the best form of government on the planet because he thinks he's part of that class.
And to everybody who is a part of that class, and I don't know why, I just thought of Oleg Gaspara, who fleeced, didn't fleece, he gave lots of money to Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell got reelected from the Kentucky aluminum plant. But all of those people, stone cold killers. And to them, Trump is a patsy. And you can tell, like Putin knows, Putin's like, oh, the war would never have started if Trump was in office.
I'd love to get film or even just an audio tape of Putin's reactions after one of his meetings with Trump.
Oh, I
mean, he's got to be sitting there going, what the actual F? How did we get this guy in power? He's so stupid.
What?
He's so manipulable. It's just, wow. He's laughing all the way to the bank because he just in awe of the fact that they were able to pull it off. It's got to be.
Well, and you had pointed out too by hitting Venezuela, and just by the threat of oil prices are going up, and which was the exact opposite of what he said he'd do. So whether or not MAGA's pissed at him or not, I don't know. They think he can walk on water, but that of course helps Russia significantly, and it doesn't appear on the surface, but when you
surviving
scratch
Trump
below,
brother is probably laughing all the way to the bank as oil prices go up.
Yes.
And he's a big Trump supporter. Huge.
I wonder why. Well, and that's, yeah. I imagine Putin sits there and says, I knew Americans were dumb, but they're so stupid that when we actually managed to get one of them in power who could really wield it, and we could take over the planet together. It's too stupid to. We got to maneuver him into this kleptocracy shit because he has no idea how to do it right anyway. We hand him everything and he still fucks it up.
Well, he desperately wants to be one of that class, that group of, I have more money than Croesus. And he isn't. He's small time because he really doesn't understand what it takes to be part of that class. Why does he have? Whoop! Did I just lose you?
Nope. I still hear you.
Oh, weird. I just lost the picture. Huh.
Oh,
well. Anyway, he wants to be part of that group, but he doesn't understand what it's all about. Putin doesn't decorate his bathroom in gold.
Yeah.
The only person that does that is a Trump-like person who thinks that those are the trappings of somebody from that class.
Yep.
He doesn't understand that, no, it's just the opposite. It's you don't do that. I mean, who was it famously? Leland Stanford. Have you heard the story?
No, the name sounds familiar. But
how Stanford University was founded? So Stanford's son died at a relatively young age. And Stanford and his wife went to, I don't remember if it was Harvard or Yale, but one of those places. And he wanted to endow a building and a professorship seat or something. Stanford walked in dressed like he usually dressed. He was not a guy who dressed fancy. He, basically not quite coveralls, but close to it. And the people at the university just kind of blew him off because, there's no way you can fund anything. You're some dumb farmer from upstate New York or whatever. And as he's leaving, he asks somebody, not one of the higher ups, but somebody, just as a matter of curiosity, how much does it take to fund a building and a professorship? And the guy tells him the number. And, this is in whatever money from the 1880s or 1890s it would have been. He goes, that's all? And so he says, well, I'm just going to found my own damn university. Poof, there comes Stanford. And it's the same kind of thing of the people who were at Harvard or Yale or whatever, wherever they were approached by a guy who wanted to do something that would have been enormously beneficial to them, they expected him to be of that class. Therefore, you wear the pinstripe suit with the diamond stick pin and everything else. Instead, you got a guy who's just wearing a regular old suit of clothes and his wife's in a gingham dress. And in a lot of cases, I've noticed that. My father, one of his neighbors was a guy who had founded this big company and got enormously rich. And every year he'd donate stuff to the community. He didn't live out here. This was his summer house. And they'd come out for a couple of weeks and, go water skiing and et cetera, et cetera. And he was the kind of guy, and the reason my dad liked him, he was just a normal guy. And you didn't know he was somebody. He didn't brag about the fact he had tons of money. And when, approached with, well, the fire department out of here doesn't have a lot of money, and we were hoping we might ask you to donate some money for us to buy a defibrillator for the ambulance that we have. Oh, sure, no problem. How much do you need? Didn't even ask the amount, just took his checkbook out. How much do you need? When he passed, his sons still own the same property. Not only did they not continue supporting the community out here, they went almost out of their way to deliberately be the most obnoxious neighbors that they could be, because it was all about showing, I have the latest car. I have the latest speedboat. I can make it drive real loud just so it annoys the hell out of the people that live out here all the year round. This is my fourth wife. Yeah, I know she's 20 years younger than me and looks like she's a model, but that's why I have her, that kind of thing. And it's the kind of mentality of people who think that by showing you have the accoutrement of being powerful, or what they believe are the accoutrements of being a powerful person, therefore it makes you powerful, when it's not the case. It's who you are and what you do.
Well, and I think the accumulation of this, I was thinking about this, and I'm bummed that we never did the next interview with General Hodges, because he's so soft-spoken, and so it's like number 2 guy at NATO. And but I think whatever you consider to be success, whether it's having a really strong relationship, being a millionaire, being a whatever, you take a look at Warren Buffett, you take a look at Bill Gates, and you see how he dresses. And you take a look at anybody who has achieved success. And in my experience, it ended up being so much more work and so much harder that A, they didn't have time to really worry about what other people thought about them. And B, if they had thought about what other people thought about them, they probably would have stopped and failed. They went on in spite of what society was thinking or saying. And so by the time they're successful, they have this confidence where I really don't care if you disapprove of me or if you approve of me or anything like that. Bill Gates is not trying to impress anybody with his money. Hodges isn't trying to impress anybody with his pedigree. The people who truly earned it lose interest, in my view, very quickly, usually lose interest in any social capital that it can buy, because they already have what they want and they don't really need anything else. It's the people who had it handed to them who are like, oh, I'm going to take this for a spin and get gold accoutrements, get a car that you can hear 300 miles away, and all of this other stuff. And it's very interesting in the difference between acquiring, and I'll actually jump quickly to, because I think the same thing is true with science. Jeff Bridges in Jurassic Park points out that it's a really bad idea to have science just handed to you. and that it's the people who do the work who respect what dangers there are in the science and who are respectful of the power that it can provide. The people who just, get the benefits very quickly. And we sit here all the time and say, what has science done for me lately? Let's close the FDA. Let's be an anti-scientist country. Never mind what the polio vaccine did for this country alone. And a man who, by the way, could have been a millionaire if he patented it, but instead said everybody gets this vaccine for free.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Did I say Jeff Bridges? It was, oh God, please tell me I did not say Jeff Bridges. And of course, now I can't remember his name. Goldblum. It was Jeff Goldblum. Yes, thank you. It was Jeff Goldblum.
The other Jeff.
Yeah, the other one.
On the planet, so it's easy to confuse them.
It's his brother. Don't look that up. Don't Google that, please. just take my word for it. So isn't it obvious looking at them? I mean, the dude and the guy from Thor Ragnarok. They could be twins. Oh, but and I've forgotten there was a very good sort of science example of the difference between having that knowledge. But we're so used to electricity, we're so used to X, Y, or Z that we're like, well, science hasn't really done anything in our lives. And I say that into my phone as I'm complaining about, and I got 5G. It's just like, wow. Okay. That's just me arguing with, oh God, Dorito's going to clip that. That clipping feature, I'm going to protest. I'm going to call YouTube and be like, this clipping feature really is. Oh, dear Lord. All right. So, general consensus, if I understand correctly, and Titan had said this, and I had passed his message on to you. I thought it was interesting. I think what he was saying. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but sort of my takeaway is that basically it's to the benefit of a great many people if Trump succeeds. People like Putin, people who've been trying to make this happen. And so they're all working. But
it's not just foreigners.
Yeah.
To be honest. There are plenty of people in this country that want him to succeed, too.
The Koch brothers. I was going to say, what's his name, but he's Australian. Murdoch. And now, did Murdoch, who just bought, who is trying to buy Paramount right now?
I don't follow.
Somebody is trying to buy Paramount, and I think it's Murdoch. And if he gets it, he will have a hold on, I think now, 80% of the media in the U.S. Wow. Anyways, yeah, it's going to be... the Koch brothers may hate him, but he makes them a lot of money. So, the general consensus is that I think that the goal is to deploy.
Paul said, I thought the Koch brothers hated Trump. Well, the surviving Koch brother. Yeah, they don't particularly like him, but he's a tool. It's like the German industrialists in, the 30s in Weimar Germany. We can control this idiot. He's a useful tool to getting what we need, what we want.
And he's proven reasonably reliable to all of them, and to getting lawsuits thrown out, and to getting mergers that should not have been approved by the FDA, not the FDA, FCC. So if the FDA were approving mergers, that would be interesting. Yeah. So in your view, the goal then is to try to get as much violence as possible out of the government shutdown starting on November 1st.
Yeah.
And certainly to get enough to justify sending in the National Guard and or the Insurrection Act and sending them wherever you want, regardless of who owns. I have to look up the merger. There's Oh, wow. Um, all right. Well, any final thoughts on any of this stuff before we go?
Uh, I keep telling people here and when I'm on with the shills not to lose hope. It does get depressing reading all the crap that goes on every day, but there are signs that things are starting to fall apart on that side of the fence. And, you know, I'll get, again, I use references for my own little existence out here. The last, before the most recent one of the No Kings protests in our little local town, got about 250 to 300 people. And we're a small community, understand that. So that's not an insignificant number. The most recent one, it was 600. So the opposition and the willingness to get involved and to help organize is growing. And that's what gives me hope that we may be able to weather the worst of the storm. To me, the big question isn't, will we get out of this mess? I think we will. The question is, what happens after him? And if you look at it from an historical perspective, the outcomes are not as rosy as one might hope. About half the time, what ends up happening is you get somebody who comes in and they kind of go through the motions of going back to democratic principles, but the damage has been done and it's really just fascism light, if you will. There's a potential, of course, for a coup. And let's say the military pulls it off. What does that mean? Well, we've now gotten away from lawful transition of power. Violence is now a way to transition power. That's something we don't want to set up. And there's no guarantee that a military regime, even if it's only there for 6 to 12 months, like happens with the Turks periodically, there's no guarantee that they're going to allow it to transition back to a full democracy as we understand it. The chances of it actually going back to a position where we fix the faults, the damage that was done, and the conditions that allowed that damage to be done in the first place, that's pretty low. So that's something I think more and more we should all be giving some part of the mental timeshare to. What do we want to see come once he's gone? How do we want to fix things so that the problem never occurs again? Stop looking at just what's that 2 car lengths in front of your car as you're driving down. Look at the car in front of that and the truck ahead of that. Try to get a sense of where traffic is really going and how you can steer it so it's not going to be another 30-car pileup.
Well, and if you don't, you can bet that the Heritage Foundation will. So,
oh yes, they've been playing this game. This is a long time.
So yeah,
since before Reagan.
Either you play and start trying to get ahead, or they will. So. All right. Well, Lance, thank you very much for joining us again. I don't know. I keep thinking of Car Talk on NPR. You frittered away another Thursday night talking with Nick on Downtime. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the live chat. Thank you for everybody. We did get 𝐒𝐚𝐦 $20. Dunk on you. Sorry. I'll get this done now. Trump is Putin, and 𝐿𝐶's rectal accomplice. Yep, yes, definitely. Thank you, Duncan, you very much for that super chat, and also for gifting 5 memberships. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for that. That's always a very big help. Titan asks a question: could a military coup ending in new elections and a reset of power work?
It worked in Turkey several times. I'm not exactly sure how many, 3 or 4, because it's written into the Turkish constitution that the military is the defender of the republic against not just external foes, but the government itself turning and acting against the interests of the Turkish nation. And they took that role very seriously. Erdogan purged the military once he got in power because he knew that what he was trying to do, they would have probably done that to him. So he made all the old generals go away, and you may recall there was a alleged coup attempt against him, but in fact, that was an orchestrated coup by his followers in order to give them the excuse to purge everybody else as being supporters, or at least tacit supporters of the coup.
Which brings up an interesting point. The Turkish constitution requires that the military overthrow the government if the government is no longer acting in the people's best interest. That was a way to insulate against some of these problems, and it's had some success and it's had some failures. I'll point out the Israeli government has the exact same thing in their constitution, and Netanyahu is clearly able to do anything he wants regardless of who he kills on either side. The one thing that appears to be universal is no system is perfect, and the only thing you can do is pay attention and act as a steward in some way. Yes. And I think in the U.S., and I think you had mentioned this last time, we became very complacent in the idea that our democracy was, again, we hadn't earned it, our democracy was bequeathed to us, and therefore unassailable and inevitable. And we sat back, and I remember getting into an argument with someone. It was actually on Maldives, I think, over Trump and his coming in for a second term. And I was just like, he's going to run for a second term. And like half the people like, oh my God, Nick, really? Why are you getting upset about this? It's like, because he could make it. I'm like, oh, he's not going to make it. Everybody knows who here said he's not going to make it the first time. And you know, but keeping an eye on your local government, because that influences the larger one, and that's what the Republicans figured out. That's what, oh dear Lord, Bush's brain, what's his name, the short guy.
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of the name.
Yeah, figured out was that if you start with the governors and if you start with the local elections, you can conquer the country. So not becoming, Karl Rove, that was it. Not becoming complacent is, I think Commander's hit the nail on the head. Getting involved, and whether it's calling your congressman, whether it's how you vote, not just voting down ticket, but making sure that you let people know. Frogs together strong, exactly. Frog strong. All right, so enough of the spiel. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Lance. Look forward to seeing you guys. We are going to be basically on standby in November, early November, and we're going to try to keep you guys apprised of what, if anything, happens. I think there's been a lot of predictions. This is one of the few times I'm not going to make a prediction. I don't know what's going to happen. I think something's going to happen. That's about all. It's going to be difficult for a lot of people, and how that translates to the national discourse, I do not know. But I have hopes, but I do not know. So Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you Tuesday for 𝐒𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐷ering, who unfortunately we missed another. I owe him like a box of cookies or something. But in the meantime, I hope everyone there is taking care of themselves. Come join us on the Discord. Laugh, cry, mostly laugh. There's some great memes. And look forward to seeing you guys at our next show. Have a good night.